Hi everybody, I'm Rick Burns from HubSpot, and I'm here today with Dan Schawbel, and Dan is the author of Me 2.0, and he's doing a whole bunch of other really cool things. So I'd like to spend some time talking with him today. Welcome to HubSpot, Dan.
Thank you, it's great to be here.
So I want to talk about your book, this book you've just written, Me 2.0, there you go. But I also want to talk about some of the sort of pieces of advice that you have for marketers a little later. But let's start off with the book. How did you get started on this book project?
Well, it's really interesting because I had a marketing position right out of school for just about a year at EMC Corporation, more of a product marketing role. And then I started experimenting with social media towards the end of that year. And what ended up happening was, after starting a blog and then doing the Personal Brand Awards and then Personal Branding TV, which is like a TV show much like this online, I decided to do a magazine. And then after the magazine, I got written up in Fast Company magazine. And then my employer had no idea what was going on outside of work. And the PR group within EMC got a hold of it, sent it to a vice president. They were starting to move in the social media direction, and then they hired me to be the first social media specialist.
Excellent. So you're the first social media specialist at EMC Corporation.
Yep, and that was last November was when I got my role.
Okay, so there are
and I didn't apply for it. And that was the big difference between that point and then me meeting with a lot of people at EMC to get my first position, which took months. So it was a huge difference, and it's kind of forms the basis and the story throughout my book.
So there was all this work you were doing on the side, outside of your career, and this ended up coming back in and moving you forward in your career. Is that what happened?
Exactly, and I got compensated based on my passion, which is kind of what I preach to people, is that, you know, you can build a blog, you can build your brand outside of work, and at some point, you're going to be able to be compensated based on that if you make the right moves.
Okay, so let's talk about the book a little. What do you talk about in the book?
The book's divided into a series of chapters. There's actually 10 chapters, and I give a history of personal branding from when Tom Peters wrote the Brand Called You article in 1997, and then towards today, which is, you know, people are using social media tools in order to network and to build their brand and get noticed by employers or anyone else who they're trying to network with or to try to get a job. And you know, this transition I capture in the book, and really what I do is I divided personal branding up into a series of topics, in 8 different topics. A few of these topics are like marketing and branding and career development and human resources and public relations and relationship networking. And the key with all of this is that personal branding is not simple. It involves a lot of things, and you really have to have a good knowledge of all these different topics in order to master personal branding. So that's a whole chapter is designated to that. Then I talk about the rise of millennials and how they're changing the workplace, and that's really important because from a corporate perspective, they have to brand themselves as the great place to work, like HubSpot or EMC.
When you say millennials, what do you mean by millennials?
Millennials are people who are like me, like 1982 to 1993 range, or 1996.
Born in those years.
Correct. And you know, these people are changing the workforce. They're raised on technology, but in some sense, they have a bad brand name. Like a lot of the press write about how millennials are lazy, they're very needy, and they think that when they get into a company, it's not going to be an entry-level position. They're going to be graduated to a manager's position within like a year. And so I help millennials throughout the book as well, how to brand themselves and how to market themselves so they're seen as valuable to their corporations.
I see. So is getting a job, I mean, is branding and personal branding, is that sort of related to getting a job? I mean, is that something that's important to do when you're getting a job?
Yeah, I mean, you can create your own position. That's something I did, and that's kind of a luxury because, you know, it's not easy to do that. There was some luck involved and some timing. But you know, you can brand yourself as an entrepreneur and use social media tools in order to connect with other entrepreneurs, maybe form a partnership, maybe get new clients that way, or get feedback through a blog or social networks to help you develop your product or service. Then, you know, within a corporation, you want to brand yourself to be a very good team player, and you want to brand yourself as someone who's giving value and is necessary within a corporation, and become the go-to person for a specific skill so that you're needed. Therefore, you know, the chances you'll progress through the corporate hierarchy are greater.
So it makes sense to me why you want to do this. But what are the things involved in doing it? What does branding yourself mean? What are the kinds of things I need to do to brand myself?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people mess this part up because they immediately say, oh, I need a blog, I need to be on social networks, I have to create resume, all this stuff, and then I have to just go for it. And the issue is that there's actually a process that is used throughout the book and everything I talk about. And the first phase is discovery. You really need to sit down, and most people are just either too lazy or they just want to rush into things because maybe their peer or their teacher or their parents said you should be a CPA or you should be a lawyer. And the key is you want to sit down and you want to just hammer out, how do you describe yourself? What are your strengths? What are your goals? What are you passionate about? What types of positions could you take? Or what type of need is there in the marketplace that you could become an entrepreneur? Like, you got to hammer all this stuff out before you start creating all these materials to represent your brand, and like, how do you describe yourself? What's one sentence that captures everything you are? So for instance, mine is leading personal branding expert for Gen Y. So, I do personal branding for the younger generations, even though a lot of the stuff I talk about can be used by companies or people who are older than me.
Yep.